The vision of Karma Yoga. This is for the retreat that's coming up in July. For the people who are planning to come here, this is just an overview so that you understand what we're going to be talking about during the retreat. So the vision of Karma Yoga comes from the Bhagavad Gita, and these are the words of Sri Krishna. So these are the great seers. They're called rishis. Rishi means seer. So then you might wonder, we all see because we all have a pair of eyes that we can see with. When you think about it that way, these are seers who can see that which that which doesn't meet the eye. It is much more than that which meets the eye. So they could see beyond what we could see. Something much beyond what we see on a regular basis. So these are called rishis, and they have this amazing vision. And if we live by that vision, then we can become God-like individuals. That's the goal. Okay, so Sri Krishna presents this vision in a beautiful way in the second chapter, and throughout the Bhagavad Gita. But we're going to look at one of the verses from the second chapter, and it is in the form of. It's a verse which has 4 parts, but we can look at the 4 parts as sutras. Sutra is something that it's very unique to the Sanskrit literature. It is very unique, probably because the language Sanskrit didn't have a script, so everything was memorized. So, and then the literature is so vast that it is impossible to memorize everything, right? It'll be very difficult to memorize everything. So what they would do is, they would come up with these aphorisms. That's the sutra. So there would be these terse aphorisms, and that would be very profound. It won't be obscure at all. Well, if you read it, it'll be very profound, and you can elaborate on it for hours together. Or you can take this one aphorism and elaborate upon it for hours and hours. That's how they were set up. So one of these verses has 4 parts, and they can be seen as sutras, aphorisms, and it's very beautifully thought out and presented by Sri Krishna, and studying which we can change the way we view the world itself. Our attitude towards the world will completely change if we correctly understand the vision of Sri Krishna. So that is the importance of these verses. Okay, and so suppose the sage of Massachusetts comes up with his ideas, right? With his vision. Maybe Emerson can be called as the sage of Massachusetts. And suppose he talks about his ideas, then it would be in his native language, which is English, right? Similarly, Sri Krishna, he talks about his vision in the language, which is Sanskrit. Okay, so that's why this is in Sanskrit. And we'd also like to look at it as, in those days, all the knowledge was recorded in the Sanskrit language. Well, in this stage, today when we look at all the knowledge of the world, the leading ones, are all recorded in English language. So you need to necessarily know the language so that you can educate yourself, right? So that's how it is. So, but then in those days, it was recorded in Sanskrit. And it is amazing what kind of knowledge they had those days. We cannot access it as much because nobody knows Sanskrit well enough to read it, understand it, and to see what they knew. And if you really read some of the stuff, it's amazing how much knowledge they had in those days. And later on in the West, what people discovered, philosophers came up with these their own visions. They were already there many centuries ago, recorded in the Sanskrit language by some rishis, in those days. So but then they did not want. The point is not to have credit for themselves. So they never even put their names on their work. Sometimes, it was not important, and history was not important. for Indians. Therefore, nothing was recorded until much later, So that's how it was presented. So all this knowledge is recorded in the Sanskrit language. Okay, so one such rishi is Sri Krishna, and he gives us this vision of karma yoga many centuries ago. It was written many centuries ago, but it is still valid today. And if we understand it and we practice it ourselves, then we can gain from it, and we can avoid a lot of pain on a daily basis. And that is what is important, right? So that's a little bit about Sri Krishna and his vision. And then in India, Krishna, the more popular form of Krishna is Radha Krishna. So the Radha Krishna is very loved by everybody, very popular also. You don't find very many people sitting down and studying the Bhagavad Gita, whose author is Sri Krishna. So that is the Gita Krishna versus Radha Krishna. So this difference is there. This difference is very much there. So much so that Swami Vivekananda made a comment. He said, leave alone Radha Krishna and you focus on Gita Krishna. Because Radha Krishna is the one who grew up in Vrindavan, a place in North India. And then he was a very naughty child, so he would go to people's homes and steal butter, and then and stuff like that. So he's described like that. Everybody loves that Krishna. He's more popular, and there are many, many, many stories about that Krishna as well. Very interesting stories. Kids would enjoy it. Some adults will also enjoy it. That's all there. But Gita Krishna is not as popular. And my teacher, who travels around the world, says more people outside of India study Gita more than they do in India. So that's how it is. And so Bhagavad Gita in the West, if you look at it, there are many scholars who have read the Gita, and they have really appreciated it, and they have commented on it as how it affected them positively in their own lives. So when the printing press was invented somewhere in the 15th century, they started taking, it was in Germany that it was invented, and so they used to bring books from all over the world and get it printed, and Bhagavad Gita was one of the books that they got printed maybe in the 18th or 19th century. And since then, many people, many philosophers were drawn to it. They read it. Some of them learned the Sanskrit language and then studied the Gita in the original language, So that's also known, and everybody, it's appreciated by everybody. It's a beautiful text to study. Okay, so one such person is Carlyle. He's a Scottish philosopher. He read the Bhagavad Gita. These are transcendentalists. So they somehow got drawn to Bhagavad Gita. So he read it, and he recommended it to Emerson when he visited him from the United States. And so he also read it, and they have, they loved it. They really loved it, and they have made comments about that. Okay, and then Bhagavad Gita has 3 parts in it. So it is Karma Yoga, Bhakti Yoga, and Jnana Yoga. These are the 3 parts. Now, this is based on the certain endowments that this body, the physical body, has. There are certain powers that are given to this body as endowments, and they are the life force, prana, which is the life force, which is in and through this body, and the second is the emoting ability, and the third is intellecting ability. So what we need to, this is enormous power. If you think about it, I can give you some examples like the power of emotion. Hitler comes to mind, right? Because Hitler had hatred so much so that he went ahead and he did some terrible things with that. This is an extreme example to show how powerful an emotion that is. If you put it to use, you can move mountains with it. That's the power of this emotion, right? That we are endowed with. And then, of course, physical strength is there. that comes from the life force that is reflecting in his body. But for these endowments, this body is completely useless. It becomes a cadaver, right? It's completely useless. And then again, there is this intellecting ability, which is the reason we have all these universities. All these universities are there. But that is the reason how America put a man on the moon. This is coming from that ability of intellection. And so the goal is to harness these powers to achieve the ultimate goal, rather than focusing on other stuff and wasting it away. So you harness it, and then you direct it in the correct direction, and so you arrive at the highest goal. Okay, so in India, maybe not today, because these days people have changed, and their aspirations and all of that have changed. But in earlier days, a goal like wealth, gaining a lot of wealth, or sense pleasures, all of these goals were looked down upon. Okay, the goal to have is to know the self, or becoming one with God. That was the goal. That was supposed to be the superior goal that one would would keep as their particular goal. So that is called yoga. So the communion with God. Somehow travel to a place and be with God, because God is not here. That can be a goal. Or here and now you commune with God. That was considered the ultimate goal that everybody should follow. And let's see. So karma yoga. If you look at the dictionary meaning of it, it would say something like selfless action, an action to achieve the higher goal. All of that is there in the dictionary if you look at it. But the way Sri Krishna puts it, it is you take an action, not a trivial action, not some silly action like taking a shower or brushing your teeth, not that kind of actions. Some action you perform with an intention, with a set of actions that you perform with a certain goal in mind, for a certain result in mind, right? That kind of action. So if you perform those actions, if you change your motive behind it, and you change the way that you think and feel about it before you perform these actions, then it becomes karma yoga. That's how he describes it. Okay? And so on and so forth. So we'll be looking at this throughout the retreat that we have here. And then karma yoga, maybe I can give you an example. Suppose a person is sweeping the streets. Like in India, they actually manually sweep it. They don't have these fancy, driving and sweeping machines in India. So they actually come and clean the street. So that is a certain action that you can perform. Another action is like you go to a temple and perform a ritual, propitiating a deity. Okay, that is an action. Now, which one, if you ask which one is superior, if you are a karma yogi, you will say it depends. You will not answer right away. Okay, if you're a dualist, or if you're a dualist, then you would say, oh, of course, going to the temple and performing a ritual is the better karma, they would say. But if you look at it from the karma yoga point of view, it depends on what your thought process is. Suppose this person who is sweeping the streets, he says, okay, God is going to walk here. God is going to be using the street. Therefore, I'm cleaning it. Okay, if he thinks that way, and then if this priest is thinking, I'm going to do this puja and on behalf of somebody, and this person is going to give me a good donation at the end of it. That is his thought process. If you look at it that way, then the sweeper's work, what he's doing, is superior to what the priest is doing. Okay, so what should be the right attitude of the priest? The priest should be thinking that I'm propitiating a higher power, and that's it. He's not looking for anything in return. That should be his attitude. Then his work is also called karma yoga. Suppose the person who's sweeping the street says, oh, you know what, I'm sweeping the street because I'll get a paycheck at the end of the month so that I can go home and feed my family. If he's thinking that way, then it doesn't become karma yoga. Okay, so then suppose this guy's attitude is different now. He's saying, okay, I'm sweeping the floor because this is going to be used by Bhagavan, God. Does that mean he won't get his paycheck? No, he'll still get his paycheck. All right. So one is called prayojana and the other is called phala. So the phala means the result of an action, which is like a paycheck. Paycheck would be the result of the action that you get, phala. Okay, but prayojana is gods are going to walk. So he sees God in everybody. It's not just he's discriminating between people and God. God is in and through everyone. So God is going to be walking through these streets, and so that is the prayojana. So when they walk, they'll find a clean street for them to walk. So that is the prayojana. Okay. So if somebody is building a bridge, then people will be able to go from one place to the other without any problems. That is the prayojana. And the engineer gets a paycheck at the end of the month. That is the phala. Okay. So with that, I'm going to conclude this introduction. And we will analyze it further when you come and spend a few days with Manoj and I. And we're looking forward to it. Thank you very much.